You are my sons, the dragon and the spider. Your actions, or in this case inaction, reflects upon me.
The spider and the dragon, otherwise known as Sakichi and Ukichi. The two of them were among the most unusual members of the Yotei Six, where the Oni was a disgraced general, the snake an alcoholic exile, and the Kitsune a repentant spy master. These two weren't outsiders that were still bound to Saito by familial tradition or honor, but instead something much more intimate. They were in fact Lord Saito's own sons, his blood and his legacy. And in many ways that burden felt more like a curse than a privilege to all three of them. Whenever the three appear together in cutscenes, a clear dynamic emerges. Ukichi, the dragon, is the one eager to carry out their father's will, quick to act and confident in his purpose. And based on the way other characters speak about them, it's obvious he's also seen as a more capable brother. This isn't to say Sakichi, the spider, lacks a reputation of his own. He's earned a share of fear and respect, but placed beside his brother, his ruthlessness often feels overshadowed. Another symptom of the impossible expectations that come with being Saito's own kin. In Ishikari Plains and Teshio Ridge, we see exactly how the Kitsune and the Oni established their hold, through fear, deception, and the slow tightening of a noose. Fire, masks, shadows, superstition. Their power grows through myth as much as muscle. Oshima Coast, however, is an entirely different story. It marks a new phase of Clan Saito itself, a shift from terror in the dark to the pragmatism of open, modern combat. Here there are no masks or ritual theatrics. Instead, we see firearms, new weapons forged for a new era, and strikingly, women serving as the marksmen, standing along Saito's men without anyone batting an eye. This transformation holds deeper meaning when viewed through Saito's past. His downfall at the Battle of Nagashino came at the hands of an enemy who used firearms with brutal efficiency. He understood that guns would define the future of warfare. His own words made that clear. And now, as an outlaw rebuilding his clan on Ezo, he embraces the very weapon that once destroyed everything he ever had. Even more shocking, especially for 1603, is his willingness to enlist women in combat roles. For most samurai lords, this would have been a source of shame, evidence of desperation or even dishonor. Yet Saito not only accepts it, he completely weaponizes it. He acknowledges the infamous Onryo is a woman, perhaps even directly influencing why he would come to see women as yet another resource to strengthen his forces, and turns their involvement into a psychological edge against his enemies. That's the duality of Saito's reborn clan. A disgraced warlord who once clung to tradition, now accepting the very tools, which were firearms and female warriors, that traditional society would condemn him for using. Not because his values evolved, but because survival forced adaptation. And at the center of this new frontier stands Saito's sons, the Saito brothers. Both of them wield firearms with skill and are tasked with executing their father's will across Oshima Coast, often with disastrous results. Oyuki, one of the few who understood not only Saito but his children, offers crucial insight into why the brothers operate with such aggression. Their violence isn't simply blind obedience or inherited ruthlessness, it's something much more fractured. Something rooted in childhood, shaped by loss, pressure, and a father whose expectations was constantly evolving. There are gaps in the story. Details we'll never fully know, but we do know enough to understand the shape of the Saito brothers' tragedy. For Ukichi, the dragon and firstborn, everything begins with his desperation to win his father's approval. Now, he's often painted in a more favorable light than his brother. Eager, dutiful, disciplined. But even that favor is poisoned at the root. When Lord Saito first presented him with the sword he still carries, he paired the gift with a straightforward threat. If Ukichi ever failed him, he would cut his throat with that very same blade. That is the foundation of the dragon's identity. It's no surprise then that his cruelty only intensified after two defining moments in his life. First, the betrayal of Kengo. In Lord Saito's mind, Kengo's desertion triggered everything. The starvation, the collapse of his command, the death of his infant daughter and the suicide of his wife. This single act reshaped Saito into the creature of cruelty, and his sons grew up inside the blast radius of that transformation. Ukichi would have felt this shift more than anyone, and his drive to compensate for his father's grief and rage likely hardened into something incredibly vicious. The next was the failed assassination of Master Yoshida. When Atsu runs into Master Yoshida, he already had a long history with the brothers, and according to his own account, he had been hunting down the Saito brothers for over a year. He thought he had finally had them cornered. Instead, the brothers turned the table, setting up an ambush where roughly 40 of their gunmen cut down over 100 Matsumai samurai. As the battle ended, the spider moved through the field, methodically executing the wounded. But Yoshida wasn't finished. When Sakichi drew close, the Odachi master suddenly swung, cutting into him, and he would escape. As we know, the spider wouldn't succumb to his wounds. However, what he suffered at the hands of Master Yoshida was a public embarrassment. A failure Lord Saito blamed on both of his sons. From then on, killing Master Yoshida stopped being just another assignment. It became bitterly personal for both of the brothers. It ballooned into becoming a matter of honor, revenge, and erasing a stain on their family name. The obsession only deepened with rumors that Yoshida had also stolen the dragon's lover, adding yet another layer to the immense humiliation the dragon already suffered at the hands of Master Yoshida. Put together, these moments explain why Ukichi hardens the way that he does, not just as a brutal enforcer, but as a son who was raised on threats, loss, and personal humiliation, still chasing a father's approval that was never really there to begin with. As Lord Saito's approval grew harder and harder to earn, Ukichi's struggle became almost unbearable. No matter how many men he killed in his father's name, whether by sword or by musket, it was never enough to close the distance between the two of them. That constant failure would come to develop something new inside of him: envy. Not for his father, but for his younger brother, Sakichi. Never carried the same crushing need to be validated. He didn't crave Saito's praise in the same desperate way Ukichi did. And to the dragon, that difference looked like freedom. Freedom from the pressure, freedom from the fear of disappointing. A man who never hesitated to threaten his own two sons. But envy is rarely one-sided. What Ukichi saw as Sakichi's freedom, Sakichi saw differently. The spider envied the attention his older brother received, even when that attention came laced with danger, criticism, or outright threats. To him, the dragon was the chosen son, the one trusted with the sword, with responsibility, with their father's gaze. Even if that gaze was cold, even if it carried impossible expectations, it was still something the spider longed for. Two brothers, each believing the other had what they lacked, each trapped in the shadow of a father who gave neither what they ever truly needed. Based on how Lord Saito speaks to the spider, and how the spider speaks about his father, the disconnect between them is unmistakable. Even in the game, that divide becomes literal. The spider's used as bait to draw out the more elusive, more disciplined dragon. Sakichi's reckless, drunk, performing shows in the middle of a war. He's infamous for cruelty and excess, but almost no one ever asks where any of it comes from. Where the spider's brother was driven by a relentless need for his father's approval, the spider was shaped by something very different: reluctance. Rumor has it Sakichi never wanted to be a samurai at all. He had no interest in inheriting the family's legacy. He wanted to be an actor, not a warrior. Yet just like his brother, his father placed a sword in his hands. And where the dragon's blade would come to symbolize his duty and expectation to never fail, the spider's sword came to represent the pain of being forced into a life he never chose. Even his kid is tellingly named the spider's snare. He's caught, trapped by expectations he just can't escape from. His father never entertained his dream of acting. He never offered the youngest son the attention he craved. And with no outlet, no acceptance, and no identity outside of violence, the spider coped in the only way he knew: by living out a tragedy. He drowned himself in decadence. He unleashed cruelty on others. He projected disappointment, resentment, and frustration outward because he had nowhere else to put it. While the dragon became a weapon shaped by duty, the spider became a man crushed by a role he never wanted, turning his entire life into the performance he had once only dreamed of acting out on a stage. But this was the life he was stuck in. As if the elusive approval of Lord Saito and the forced march into samurai life weren't burdensome enough, the Saito brothers carried another burden: the deaths of their mother and baby sister. Those losses forever changed their father, and in turn reshaped everything expected out of the two of them. So much of Saito's hopes, his legacy, his future, even his own identity, became pinned on his sons. In their game, their actions and failures reflect directly on him. He judges them with a level of harshness that borders on cruelty. Yet privately, there's another truth at play here. He admits that his boys are all he has left. They are his remaining legacy after all. The only ones meant to carry on his name once he's gone, and more painfully, they're the final living ties to his wife and daughter he lost so long ago. This is why their failures are so tough, and why their deaths ruin everything for Saito. When the dragon's killed and the spider flees, something irreversible happens in that moment. The two people anchoring Saito to both his past and his imagined future are instantly ripped from him. The moment the dragon dies and the spider runs, Lord Saito abandons all hope in his remaining legacy. The last fragments connecting him to family, purpose, or even redemption completely vanish. With nothing left to preserve, nothing left to pass on, Saito no longer holds even the faintest reservation about discarding the spider, or burning down everything in his path.
You would betray your father?
He abandoned me.
I wish the dragon was given more on-screen time. It would have been amazing insight to see more of his personality, how he interacted with his brother outside the presence of their father, the way they ran a military campaign together, or what he thought of the spider drowning himself in sake. Unfortunately, we don't have any of that, but what we do have is quite a bit on the spider. Much of his interactions do feel forced, specifically the dark laugh he has. At first, I thought it was just Sucker Punch's way of trying to make him seem more demented, with it even being a corny way to portray him as a true deplorable villain. But in hindsight, after rewatching some of the cutscenes and interactions with him, I think it's their way of trying to show him playing out this tragedy. And there's some moments that definitely betray that. There's 3 prime moments where it's quite evident he doesn't really have that warrior spirit inside of him. The first can be seen quite early. When Atsu appears during the play of the Night of the Burning Tree, he's more terrified than anything, leaving much of the fighting to the army of men at his disposal. And let's not forget, after defeating him, he crawls around on all fours while Atsu calls him pathetic, and he does the same thing he does when he's later captured, making it quite apparent to everybody around him that there's going to be a hell to pay when his brother and father come for him. When he's incarcerated, he's more confident in the way he talks, even going so far as to try to scare Atsu and Jubei by hinting Kiku of being a target of his brother and father's wrath. On his way to his staged execution, Atsu and Jubei make it known that this is all to get the more valuable brother. It's during the same time that the spider shares the position he was placed in the night everything happened 16 years ago.
Our families have been at war for a long time.
The Night of the Burning Tree wasn't war. It was a massacre.
I wasn't given a choice. That night that my brother and I didn't shoot you, our father would have done worse to us.
You destroyed our family.
That's my father's way.
While this can come off as a throwaway comment, maybe even a small way to ask for mercy or forgiveness, although I don't believe he's doing that here, it's interesting to hear he and the dragon would have suffered far worse if they didn't go through with killing the kids. Saito has already shown a great capacity for his own manipulation and cruelty by the way he branded Oyuki in front of the other Yotei 6 members, forcing her to hold back her screams so she doesn't reveal that she was in fact a woman. Perhaps everyone around Saito truly was just a means to an end, but I wanted to point this out specifically because it highlights that the brothers may have suffered more cruelties than just harsh words and disapproval in the past. And with the way Atsu says he destroyed their family, note how he casually says, "That's my father's way." Perhaps that wording by the spider has multiple meanings as well. Does he blame Saito for ruining their family? Is he referring to Saito ruining families in general, or was it back to him commenting on his father's way of subjecting his sons and those around him to far much worse if they don't do what's expected out of them? The other moments that show how badly he struggles with being a warrior, yet still tries to prove himself for his father, happen around his brother's death. The instant he sees the dragon dies, he immediately runs. But the next time we see him, he's in front of his father, promising he'll do whatever it takes to avenge his slain brother. It feels like someone who knows he had a real chance to do something and yet didn't. And now he has to answer for it. He's scrambling to fix what can't be fixed, and Saito sees right through it. He flat out doubts him, telling him he let his brother die on the day of their victory. The way Saito sees it, the brothers should have either survived together or died together. In his eyes, everything else is failure, and the spider's the one left holding that blame. Then we have the final showdown between Atsu and the spider. The one time he finally lets his true mask slip is right here.
My father is holding them prisoner. I'll take you to them. Meet me at the ferry crossing to the north.
You would betray your father?
He abandoned me.
For us, it's the point where he admits he's willing to betray his father because just before he told him how he could drink himself to death for all Saito cared. However, I think it's much deeper than that. This whole moment doesn't have that forced laughter, snicker, or any hope of Saito coming back to avenge his son. Instead, it's whimpering. Clear submission that his time in this role is over. His brother's dead, his father blames him for that, and with his brother gone and his father wanting nothing more to do with him, what does he really have left? Nothing. Now, I really don't want to downplay the severity of having your brother killed and your parent disowning you for that. That's heavy and would absolutely crush anyone. However, I think it's much deeper, in the sense that his whole life, he's been living this life he never wanted. Killing people and finding solace at the bottom of a sake jar. That's the way I think he's always escaped and managed to cope with the things he's doing. Because he hates what he's forced to do. Meanwhile, he gets called a drunk and failure for that, so he in turn unleashes his cruelty on executing people as a way of an angry outlet. When he's caught, he can count on his family, or at the very least his brother, to come save him, but now he has nothing. And as he says after all of this, he's going back to the mainland to discover who he really is without his brother and without his father. This admission here of his father abandoning him, I genuinely think is the first time he ever out loud admitted that his father left him. He never got the attention, the positive reinforcement, or any kind of compromise in the middle. Instead, he was only ever met with expectations, duty, and disgrace when he couldn't meet what his father wanted out of him. And now, with no redemption, all you can do is shrug your shoulders and walk away. Given his reputation and how everyone in the game talks about him, there's no excuse and there's really no forgiveness. And in the scene, while he expected death, I think he also wanted it. For Atsu, it was a defining moment where she finally decided to live for something else and not continue her quest of revenge, which is powerful in of itself. However, I think leaving the spider alive is one of those moments where it's a fate worse than death because he has to live with everything he's done. And it becomes more of a moral question for the audience, really. Should he have been killed? Or was mercy the right call here? Or would the mercy call be actually killing him?